Hi, everybody, and welcome back to part two of our podcast with Francis. And I am delighted to welcome Francis back to continue our conversation. Francis, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Very excited to have been welcomed back, and hopefully we'll have some really good, fun conversations about what I've been up to.
We were talking last time about things like sexuality, your background in rowing, and we were just about to get onto this amazing experience that you had over the summer. So let's start there. Tell me about... Is it Zambezi or Mozambique?
Well, that is a good question. So I was very lucky to have been part of an expedition previously in 2018 as part of a overall drive to row the entire length of the Zambezi. So the name, Zambezi, was born then. This particular expedition this year in 2024 was called Mozambique because we were rowing the final stretch of the Zambezi through Mozambique.
I'm going to interrupt you there for people who don't know the region. Zambezi, the Zambezi, is a major river in Africa. What can you tell me about the river itself, how long it is, where it goes through?
Yeah, absolutely. The Zambezi is one of the major rivers of Africa. So if you all will know of the Nile, you'll all know of the Congo. The Zambezi is of equal stature. All of those rivers actually are born out of this central area. And the Zambezi is right up there as well. So it's called the water tower of Africa. And all of these rivers sort of come from the same place. The Zambezi goes through Angola. Goes through. We rode on it. It goes through Angola all the way through to the border with Zambia. While it runs through Zambia primarily, it is also on the border with Botswana and then Zimbabwe. And it passes through Zambia into Mozambique. And then from Mozambique, it flows to the Indian Ocean in Chindi, which is on the river mouth, right on the sea, right on the ocean.
Okay, so the Zambezi goes all the way from Angola to the Indian Ocean on the east coast of Africa.
On the eastern side. So it actually flows, so like most rivers, it doesn't follow a direct route. It doesn't just take the easiest route straight down. So the Zambezi actually, if you're looking through a term that most people understand, meanders quite dramatically, and it goes all the way round through Angola before passing into Zambia, although it sort of is born out of this sort of water tower in the central area of Africa. And all of those rivers are sort of born out of the same place, but it's sort of then, if I'm doing it from this side, it flows around up through Zambia and then over into Mozambique before going towards the Indian Ocean. So yes, it takes a very roundabout route to get there.
And you guys had to row the whole thing?
We had to row part of it this time.
Well, this time, but overall, you did the whole thing.
Overall. So overall, the expeditions have done the whole thing, yes.
Wow.
So the first one in 2011 was from Angola to the edge of Victoria Falls. The second one was across Lake Kariba, which is one of the major lakes on the border between Zambia and Zimbabwe. And then the third expedition that I was part of in 2018 was actually one of the tributaries of the Zambezi, the Kafue, and the Kafue flows into the Zambezi from northern Zambia. And that was really cool because it was lots of wildlife, animals. It was a national park, so that was amazing. And then this particular expedition, this final one, was from the border with Mozambique to the ocean.
Wow. So how many kilometers is that?
The river in its entirety, I'm not sure. I know that I was part of rowing 900 kilometers from the border to the ocean. And when I did the Kafue in 2018, it was about 850 kilometers. So a long distance of rowing.
Blimey, I think is what I'm allowed to say on YouTube. Gosh, that is quite a row. And I did not know this thing about the water tower. So effectively, the Zambezi starts presumably at some kind of altitude. Is that right?
Yeah. So like all rivers, most of them are born out of higher mountain ranges or plateaus. And a lot of Central Africa is quite high. Because it's quite high, a lot of the rivers start there, and then obviously they flow. They obviously want to go from high elevation to lower elevation. So most rivers take those routes. The Nile is a river that is born out of rivers and mountains that are found around Lake Victoria, flow into Lake Victoria, and then from there it goes north. The Congo, the rivers again are born out of the mountains on the edge of the DRC and Rwanda, and then it flows down through the jungle, the Congo jungle, to the Atlantic.
Goodness me! So this phase that you just did, the phase that's being called Mozambique because it went through Mozambique.
Yeah,
love what you did there. That was the final leg that took you from Zambia to the Indian Ocean.
Yes, indeed.
Wow.
So it was actually in two parts. So the first part of the expedition, we rowed from Tete, which is a city in northern Mozambique, to the Indian Ocean. So we were rowing downstream in our cruise, and I'll talk more about that in a bit, I'm sure. We rowed downstream, so it was quite quick, relatively speaking. I mean, quick as much as you can go in these sort of quite heavy coastal rowing boats, and in teams of three, so groups of three. And we rowed all the way down to the Indian Ocean. We then travelled back to the edge of the Kahora Bassa Lake in the north, and we rowed upstream back to Zambia, basically. So overall, we rowed the entire length of the Zambezi within Mozambique. We just did it in two parts.
Well, congratulations. Tell me a little bit about your expedition. How long did it last, and how intense was it?
So the overall expedition, we were away for about a month. Within that, we had some preparation time and some time in between the two legs, a day between the two legs, and a bit of decompression time at the end. But the actual rows themselves, so the first one was about 12 days, and the second one was about 10. So it was long periods of rowing, intense over a long period of time.
Yeah.
And a lot of trials and tribulations along the way in regards to the wildlife, in regards to mechanical failures, in regards to illnesses from the team as well. So it was a big challenge, but we overcame it together, particularly because we were a team. We all had each other's back all the way through. And I think that was really important to overcome those challenges.
We'll come on to the role of teamwork, because that's an important part of our 2025 calendar, as indeed are you. But more of that later. Stay tuned, and if you're watching this on YouTube, click and subscribe, and maybe look in the box below. There might be a discount coupon. I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't do social media. I remember you mentioning, hippos. They're a bit of a thing, aren't they?
Yes. So the wildlife was probably one of the major concerns of the trip. Obviously, it's not quite like rowing on the Thames, which is what I'm used to, where the most dangerous thing you might get is another human in making a mistake in a rowing boat. So over there, the wildlife is unpredictable and, by its very nature, wild. So we had crocodiles to contend with, and that we occasionally saw lining the bank, and they'd all slide into the river. And at that point, you just think, we just definitely don't have to fall in. Definitely stay in the boat. Don't fall in. Don't capsize. And that was quite a constant throughout. So we knew that there were crocodiles in the river all the way through our row. And a couple of points we actually had to get out to help push some of our support boats that had mechanical issues, all got stuck on a sandbank because some of the river was particularly shallow. And we had to push these boats off the sandbank or help move them if we were drifting. So we were getting out into the water, crocodile-infested water, and we had to be really careful about where we were stepping. We always had someone watching out for it. So that was the first big challenge with the wildlife. And the second one was the hippos. Now, I don't know if many people know this, but the most dangerous animal in Africa, aside from the mosquito, is actually a hippo. More humans die from hippo attacks than from any other animal. So everyone thinks it could be the lion or the leopard or the cheetah or something, but it's not. It's the hippo, because there's a lot of them, and they're very big and they're very fast. And we were putting ourselves in the firing line and occasionally rowing past pods of about 50. One pod that we had that was upwards of 100.
Wow.
And most of the ones that are in pods, they're quite safe because they feel secure. They've got other hippos around them. They'll watch you, but they're sort of just seeing you go past and like, oh, they're a bit interesting. It's the single hippos, the pods that are the hippos that are on their own, the ones that are solo, usually males, usually bulls, that are quite dangerous because they are very, very territorial. So if you go into their territory and you infringe on them, or you stay in it, we had to be super careful. We had to keep going. We had to move. We had to move fast. And actually, a couple of times we had a couple of hairy moments when the hippos started coming towards us very fast. They move very much quicker than they can. And we had to have policies and practices that we had in place to be able to row away from them. So yeah, I mean, the wildlife was very wild. We also saw elephants, but we didn't see as many, and they weren't as much of a danger. But the wildlife was incredible, absolutely amazing.
Wow. Well, hopefully we'll get to see some footage because you had a videographer there with you, and so.
Yes, so hopefully you took a lot of very good footage throughout the expedition of us rowing, primarily of us rowing, but also there was wildlife involved in there, and some of the experiences that we had, because we weren't always just on the water, we were doing some stuff on and off the water too.
Oh, well, hopefully we can share some of that with our supporters soon, because I think that you're you're obviously raising money for charity with this expedition. Tell me what the primary charitable aims of the expedition were.
So there were two different aims. The main one was to raise money for water. So our main slogan was "On Water for Water," and we were raising money for a charity called Village Water, who are based in Zambia and Mozambique. Their whole idea is to provide support and planning and water access to local villages in both of those countries. So digging a well, putting a borehole in, putting a tap in, basically giving access to these people that don't have it. The biggest drive for that around water is that it's not just about access to water. It improves so many other aspects to their life and makes them much more sustainable as a community. So they get less ill because they have fresh water. They get less infections. They get more education because they spend more time in school rather than going to collect water, particularly children. So it's a really important charity to be a part of and to be helping raise money for.
I think we forget in like Western countries, it's not that long ago that we didn't have access to fresh, clean water. And when we started having that through water sanitization and supply and main supply, I mean, that was life-changing, literally. Because so many waterborne diseases used to decimate the population until the 19th century, really, and so we forget that something we take for granted is still not something that everybody in the world can take for granted, and so I think it's good for all of us to remember that and to, water is a very key commodity.
Well, I feel like, and I think people say this, water is life. And it's a necessity. Like, we need it. Every single person on this planet needs it. Every animal needs it. And it's so important to have access to fresh water that means that you can actually live your life in a good and healthy way. And you're absolutely right. I mean, back in the Victorian times, they had no idea where some infections were coming from, and they ended up being isolated. Cholera, in particular, was a disease that was quite rife in Victorian London, and everyone thought that it was through the air. And through some very ingenious people, they discovered it was actually coming from water supply in particular areas in London. And from there, we just developed cures to those diseases. Well, not cures, but ways of dealing with them. But cholera is a big one, actually, a big waterborne disease that is a problem in Mozambique and Zambia. That obviously by giving them access to fresher and better quality water, less people get.
Well, I think it's amazing that you guys are out there working to help uh, implement solutions to that. And if people want to support you, how do they make a donation to your cause?
So we have a website, rosambeak.com, which I believe everything is still open on. And so if you want to make any contributions to that, it's an ongoing process because we want to turn the project into something different going forward, but continue the focus on water. So the charity that we're going to be raising money for is always going to be around that. And some of the money is also going to grassroots participation of rowing in sub-Saharan African countries
And
as
that's
well.
the second thing that you're working on, am I right?
Yeah, we're looking to try and raise the profile of rowing in sub-Saharan countries, so sub-Saharan African countries, allowing them access to it. Now, obviously, rowing is quite an expensive sport, unfortunately, and quite often is dominated by the same countries: the USA, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, European nations. More and more, there are some African nations that are competing on the global stage. Certainly in coastal rowing, we're seeing a big uptick of those nations there. And we want to be able to help provide them with the opportunities to take part more. So engaging them in coaching programs, providing them with facilities as much as we can, and also the equipment that they need. So the second part of our drive is that participation, bringing up that grassroots sport.
I mean, I think maybe we talked last time, although I can't remember if it made the final cut, but I kind of came to rowing as a sport through a quite unusual way by being a photographer, photographing men for a calendar. But you came to rowing through school.
I did.
And it's obviously something that's played a big part in your life. Can you just recap you're out there going through this kind of exhilarating and amazing, but also quite horrendous experience to promote this sport. Why?
I feel like rowing, for me anyway, it made a huge difference to my life. It made me the person I am, and it gave me some of the most strongest friendships that I have ever had. And the teams that I have rowed in over the years and the groups of people that I've met have been absolutely incredible, and people that I want to spend more and more time with. And the reason I want to be part of these sorts of expeditions, the reason that I like joining them despite not training to the same extent that I used to, is the opportunity to meet people who are like-minded, who are similar to me, who like the same kind of things, and also have the same drive and ability to commit to something that not everybody would want to do. I think rowing is a very powerful experience, and that's why I want to promote it as much as I can.
How much because I mean, what I've noticed about rowing, from my time like with the Warwick rowers, and then with the guys from Leander and other clubs, is everybody has to be perfectly synchronized. So
Yeah.
it's really a team effort, but not in the same way that football is, where everybody's kind of in a team but doing their own thing. You've really got to be attuned in a particular kind of way, it seems to me. What do you think?
Yeah.
Am I right?
No, you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people actually get mixed up with rowing, and they think that it seems easy. A lot of people tell me when they start training or when they get on the rowing machine that this is really simple. And actually, it might be, or you might seem to be, but if you're doing it well, or you want to do it well, it's not easy. And that is part of the team. Unless you're in a single, or you're training on the rowing machine, which are obviously more individual parts of the programs that you might be part of. The crew boats that you're in, you have to be united. Now, that might be in a boat without a cox, so it means you don't have someone telling you what to do. And in that case, you've got to be also, someone in the boat's also going to be steering it and making the calls, and you have to listen to that person and you have to do what they say. The four of you, or the two of you, then have to be unified. You have to move together, you have to be smooth, and all of those things will allow you to move fast. If you don't do that, you'll slow yourself down. And if you're in a boat that has a cox, the cox tries to keep you on that task. So while you might be rowing with the rest of the team, obviously in your own mind, you're thinking, right, I'm staying with this person. The cox might call you out. You're not actually quite in time. Can you just fine tune this little aspect? And that's what makes it so exciting for me. Every session is different. Every session, some sessions could go brilliantly, and some sessions could go terribly. And you have to learn from every bad experience to try and make it the best you ever can.
It sounds a lot like sex, I'm not going to lie. I don't know why I said that. What it does sound to me like is that it's really something where you have to manage ego.
Yes. If you're out for yourself, the boat's never going to be moving fast, because you can pull as hard as you want, you can do everything that you think you need to do, but if you're not moving with everybody else, you are going to be slowing that boat down. So you have to put aside your ego if you want to be fast. If you're in a single, you can have the big, well, not necessarily, you can have an ego, it won't have as much of an impact. It might not make you as friendly as part of a bigger team if you're training with other people, but if you're in a crew, put it aside. Be there, be part of the team, support each other, back each other up. Do help each other, criticize if maybe not criticize, give feedback where it's necessary, but be aware that you are always wanting the best for yourself, but also for the rest of the crew. And then if someone gives you feedback, take it as well, because they just want to be fast just as much as you do.
So it's really a great place to learn about teamwork and collaboration.
Yeah, it's the whole process of being part of a team allows you to really dial down into how the team works, and I think that's really important, because you're not just the team in the boat, you're the team off the water too. How are you supporting each other, checking in on potentially on nutrition, on how the rest of their training is going, backing them up if they're doing a test, so cheering them on behind them. The team is not just for one race, it's for a long period of time. And my teams that I've been in, I mean, some of the people are my best friends, my closest friends now, because I had their back in those moments, and we've got each other back even today.
I mean, I've seen that with almost all of the rowers that I've encountered over my 15 years of engagement with the sport, which, God, yeah, it's quite extraordinary. Never rowed a stroke, but
been part of a lot of rowing experiences.
I've had a lot of rowing experiences, and I've been to Henley several times. I have been on the water alongside rowers, photographing them, that kind of thing. And I've seen boats being put together, taken apart. The whole, I've seen a lot of the sport, but I think what I've seen mostly is the character of the guys involved, and the girls, I should say, because of course when I was working with the Warwick rowers, that was a club of both men and women, and the women also for a while did a calendar of their own, but I definitely came to appreciate the team spirit in rowing, and in fact I think it turned my head around about sport, because I had grown up with this very, very negative perception of sport from school, where sport was used to turn you into the kind of boy that you were supposed to be, and I was never going to be that boy, so I hated sport here hated me, and I decided that was how I was going to live the rest of my life. And rowing actually changed my mind about that and made me appreciate the value of sport. So I think I can see why you believe it's important that rowing should be accessible to more people. And I love that.
I think I found rowing because I wasn't so good at the other sports, to be honest. I tried football, tried rugby, I tried everything else. I didn't feel like it felt right to me. I did swimming for a long time, which was very individual. You were part of a team, you trained with a team, but ultimately you raced yourself. so I had this sort of quite good endurance base for swimming, and then when rowing became an option when I was a kid and I started it, I actually realised that team is what I wanted. The team is what I wanted to be around, and building off that over the years that I was part of the sport have been really, really special. So as much as I can, sharing that with other people, sharing the experiences, coaching myself, I want to get people to fall in love with the sport as well.
Well, I think that brings us quite neatly onto the 2025 calendar, because you and some of your teammates in Africa are going to be in our 2025 calendar.
Yeah, indeed.
And I think for all of you, it was the first time getting naked on camera. Am I right?
You are correct indeed, yes.
Um,
Luckily, obviously, being quite an isolated location made it a little bit easier.
Yeah, yeah. The last time I shot some of your friends from Leander, and we were doing it in London Docklands, that was a bit more complicated, for sure. But you've seen some of the pictures which we are in the middle of finalizing for our calendar. And I hope you're happy with what you're seeing so far.
I am, yeah. They're very good. I like that some of them have been tastefully placed in black and white, and the images, obviously, that are printed have sunsets because Africa is very known for its sunsets. Having those behind really seems to show the lighting is obviously fantastic. So you guys seem to have done a good job with the selection of the photos.
Well, thank you, and I think we have to give a shout out to Niall. I'll just say Niall, who was your photographer and videographer on the trip, and we will of course give him a full credit in the calendar as he wishes. But he took those pictures and then very graciously sent them over to us, and we were so delighted to receive them and so happy to have not just any old rowers in our 2025 calendar, but really quite fancy rowers. Tell us a little bit about the levels that you guys have reached in the sport, if I may ask.
So I was very lucky to row for Great Britain as a junior and then under 23 level, and then trained out of the sort of premier club of the United Kingdom called Leander for many years, and that's where I made a lot of my lasting friendships. A couple of the other chaps who were involved in the shoot, both, in fact, two of them, rowed out of Leander and University of London, and then University of Oxford. And they both actually raced at the Olympics. So one of them raced in Rio 2016 and one of them raced in Tokyo 2020.
Amazing. So we have two Olympic rowers in our 2025 calendar, folks. Just saying. University of London Boat Club, I once sat down with the guy who helped to found that club back in the day, Sir George Cox.
Yeah.
And that's quite a story, how that club came into being, but that's a story for another day, perhaps. And maybe I can get together with some of the guys from the Mozambique shoot, from the Rozambique shoot, to have a little chat about that in the future, because the theme of the calendar for 2025, and you guys helped really to distill this in my mind, because we have you guys from Africa, we have a couple who they are kind of like, I would call them sex educators, and I first encountered one of them in California. He lives in Santa Barbara, and he and his partner came down to Costa Rica earlier this year, and I did shoots with them. And they've gone on a journey together to create meaningful content, which is also very sex positive. And I also did shoots at this incredible retreat, which I think Niall was quite excited about when we were exchanging messages about the Mozambique shoot, and I said, oh yeah, I've got, you know, access to this this compound in the jungle of Costa Rica, and he was like, oh, that sounds fun. I'm like, yeah, we can definitely do that. And it was an amazing location where men had come together from all over the world, although mainly North and Central America, to kind of get in touch with themselves, with each other, with healthier masculinity, which I guess is something that you and I are both very focused on as LGBT men. I guess it was part of what drew you to this project, right?
Yeah. So I've been aware of the project since it was War of Rose. It always for me seemed as quite an amazing way to celebrate the human body in all its forms, and particularly obviously the male form. And I also liked how it was always done without a hugely sexualized component. So just to sort of celebrate the figure as it should be, and all figures as well. And I think that was really powerful for me and really sort of resonated with me as I was grappling with my own coming out journey. And so it was great to finally connect with yourself and to be able to have the conversations that we've had and to be part of everything as we have been.
Thank you, Francis. I mean, I'm very glad, because this has been a journey I've been on for 15 years. I know that you've been on a journey of your own with rowing and with sexuality for however long it's been. And I'm glad that we're able to go on those journeys together, because as we were just talking about, teamwork makes things better.
Well, I mean, it's cliche to say, but teamwork makes the dream work.
There you go. You heard it here first.
There we go.
Thank you very much for your time today, Francis. Thank you for making the extra time to talk to us.
Not a problem at all. Happy to do it.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm hoping that we're going to get together to do another shoot maybe soon, and do some filmed content, because I know that people are going to be very keen for that. But in the meantime, I will get on with the 2025 calendar to make you look your best, and we will speak again soon. Thank you again.
No worries at all. Happy to be here. Look forward to seeing the calendar in its finished form.
Thank you very much.
See you later, Angus.
Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.